Thank you very much first for this invitation. I'm very happy to be here in the Institute of Cultural Diplomacy because it resonates very deeply with what UNESCO is doing, as you rightfully said. For me, cultural diplomacy is a dialogue, it is mutual respect, it is knowing the culture of each other, it is sharing heritage, cultural, intangible heritage, it is living together. It is respecting both diversity, our diversity, cultural, natural diversity. In the end of the day, I think cultural diplomacy makes us better people. It's a graduate program, and this is something that I created. It's already 5 years at the Paris School of International Affairs, and it's within the global governance and diplomacy, because I do believe that cultural diplomacy nowadays becomes an integral part and should become an integral part of all countries. But my course is called Cultural Diplomacy Beyond National Borders. And I think this is even more important because this is exactly about cultural diplomacy of creating multilateral spaces for reconciliation, for peace, and for, I would say, driving imagination, development, bringing people together. And this is what UNESCO is trying to do, and not all, because nowadays it's a big space. There are foundations, there are NGOs. I appreciate very much the work of Europa Nostra, who is the biggest European heritage non-governmental organization working for the protection of European heritage. So, albeit there is no strict definition of what cultural diplomacy is, there are different interpretations, and in literature, scientific literature, you may find different, but definitely there is a practice, and I think that cultural diplomacy today is just indispensable, including for the United Nations and for multilateralism, to accompany efforts to establish peace. I will give you one example. And this example is for Mali in Africa. We know that in Mali in 2012 there were extremists that came and they destroyed Timbuktu, which is a mythical, I would say, city, ancient city. There was an empire, there were routes that were going there, commercial trade routes and others. And there are mausoleums and there are manuscripts that stay for centuries, more than 10 centuries, old manuscripts, very unique in the world. And these extremists occupied the northern part. They wanted to, they burned the part of this, I would say, happily not the big part, but still they could burn some of these manuscripts and destroyed mausoleums of the saints in Timbuktu that stayed there for centuries, and they were really emblematic for this type of Sufi Islam, moderate Islam in this part of Africa. So after they were pushed, and under the auspices of UNESCO, I went there with President François Hollande at that time, the French president. We promised to rebuild the mausoleums. We did rebuild the mausoleums, and in the meantime, Security Council adopted a resolution for a peacekeeping, and this is where my example comes. It is for the first time that peacekeepers of the United Nations integrated in their mandate the need to protect heritage. Why? Because it was so important for the local people, and not just the mausoleums, but also the intangible heritage. And it was for the first time that in the security peacekeepers, Security Council peacekeepers, there was a unit on intangible heritage. Because in Mali, one of the intangible heritage, on the intangible heritage list, a tradition, it is the first in the world oral democratic constitution.
Oh, wow, okay.
It's not written, but it's transmitted from one generation to another.
So we're basically talking Homer's Odyssey,
yes,
but as a
but
constitution.
But they were democratic, they were there, they elected there, they had how to manage disputes, they were self-respect. It was an extraordinary, it's called Maaden. And the idea, because the extremists did not give the opportunity during the 5 years of there, they did not allow the local people to practice this. So the idea of the peacekeepers was to revive this tradition.
So it doesn't get forgotten because it's an oral tradition.
And it's so important for this society.
And it's so important also for African pride, right? Because a lot of times we pretend that the Greeks invented democracy, but for real, all over the world, people had democratic participative practices, right?
And also because in these manuscripts there, you know that while Europe was in the dark ages, as we say, the Islamic world was the light.
Enlightenment, yeah.
Enlightenment. And these manuscripts, and this is how Europe in the Renaissance discovered ancient philosophy, Greeks, the Romans and others. It was through this transmission of this. So this shows that civilizations and cultures permeated each other, they influenced each other, they transmitted their knowledge, you know, their values also through this. And it's a good message for today, that we really can live together in respect and knowledge about each other. You know, I was Director General of UNESCO at a difficult time when we saw a lot of destruction of heritage, extremism on the rise, intolerance on the rise. We have seen the war in Syria, in Iraq, deliberately destroying, not just collateral damage, deliberately destroying emblematic heritage for whole humanity, because we all come from there, and in Mali also, in Africa. And for me it was a very difficult time. I tried to visit these places as close as possible and try to mobilize a lot of support in the world around this notion that cultural heritage is not just for some experts or lovers of beauty, of aesthetics, but cultural heritage is linked to identities of people. And if you destroy heritage, or you destroy identity, you deprive people of their identity. And that is why I did a lot of focus on the protection of heritage, on how to make this be linked to peace, to reconciliation, to post-conflict building in many cases. And the second, I would say, priority that I had was rather in the area of education. It was education of girls.
Yeah.
I have visited so many countries, and I have been in villages, I have been in schools, in countries where girls still struggle either to go to school or to stay in school, because it is not just a girl to go to school and stay there 3 years. It is to allow her to stay further on, because when girls go to school, then they are less, I would say, prone to violence, to early marriages, to early pregnancies, to poverty at the end of the day after that. And I think for many communities, societies and countries, it is a huge tragedy that you leave these millions of girls nowadays, unfortunately, living in poverty. So if I had priority at UNESCO, these were the two priorities. I mean, I totally agree with you. And I can tell you that and exactly, we should not leave, you know, this hate speech. And when in 2015, when there was this big destruction in Syria, and there were a lot of these rising extremists who were using the social media, even for recruitment, you know, in Syria, for foreign fighters and all this. And we were thinking of, at UNESCO, of how to respond to this. How can we counter this? And then we decided for the first time to launch a social media campaign which was called Unite for Heritage. And then it was considered that it was one of the most successful social media campaigns, where we gave predominantly, of course, young people the opportunity to share ideas, to upload images, to speak about their personal experiences. Universities joined this campaign and others. And I personally went to different places in the world, in the Islamic Museum in Cairo, in Beirut, in their National Museum, in many other places to launch this campaign. And this is the way we countered the narrative of the extremists online. Thank you very much. Thank you indeed. I enjoy being here, listening to the debate. And good luck for the future with your important work.
Thank you so much.